Hello, welcome back to my channel. It's been longer than I planned since I last uploaded, but I had a final project for college, so I'm gonna blame it on that. In the future, I'd like to have a consistent monthly or twice monthly upload schedule, but I'm still figuring out this whole YouTube thing, so we will see how it goes. Today's video, as you can probably guess from the title, is about Artfight. This will be my second year participating, and I'm super excited to start. This isn't really a guide to Artfight, and I won't be going very in-depth about most things, mainly because there are much better resources online, on YouTube, on the Artfight website, to get your information from, but I will go over the basics for anybody who's out of the loop. Basically, Artfight is an art trading event where people split into two teams and draw each other's characters. Whichever team has the most points at the end of the event wins Artfight for that year. There's way more to it than that, but that's the premise. This is my profile on the Artfight website, which I have recently updated. It was pretty barren and plain last year, which is absolutely fine if that's your style, but I have since added little GIFs and blinkies and changed up the formatting to make it feel a little bit more like me. So now for the meat of the video. The bread and butter. The whole reason Artfight is even a thing. Characters. OCs. If you know me, you know I love creating characters and writing lore. I've been working on a world building project for the past year or so that I am so into that I will absolutely be making at least one video about in the future. Since the whole premise of Artfight is artists drawing other artists' characters, it's kind of perfect for me. So today I'm going to go over the characters that I have uploaded to my Artfight page. Editing Mia here with a little disclaimer. So I don't have the speed paint for this first character, so you will have to watch a still image for about a minute. I apologize. There are also two other characters that I originally was going to put in this video that I decided not to include because I also don't have the speed paints for them, and they're not particularly developed characters and they don't really have any bearing on any other stories, so I figured I'd just save you guys the trouble. If you are interested in seeing them, they are on my Artfight page, so you can see them there. But yeah, it's just this first character that doesn't have a speed paint. All of the other ones will have a speed paint, something interesting to watch, I promise. But that's all for me. Let's get back to the video. So this first character is Sydney, who works as basically a tour guide and guest resources manager on the ORSD space station. He has a bit of a past. He was grown in a test tube and experimented on, so he's not an actual species of alien in this world, but he was rescued by an exploration vessel and started studying at the academy and later began working on the space station. There are too many things going on in the space station to cover here, so that might have to be a separate video if you guys would be interested in that. The other character in the world that I wanted to talk about doesn't actually have a name, so we're gonna call him Spy Guy. And before you say, "Oh, he doesn't have a name, that's not good character building," I know. Okay, I know. But I'm actually 2 steps ahead this time. The reason he doesn't have a name is because literally nobody knows his name besides himself, and honestly, he might be forgetting it too. He's an undercover special agent on a mission on the space station, and he is so top secret that his identity has basically been completely erased, Men in Black style, but even more extreme. If you've seen the X-Files, you know who I'm talking about, but it's a similar type of thing as Cancer Man, aka Cigarette Smoking Man. He just doesn't have a name. We never get to know it because he's just so top secret. So yeah, long story short, he doesn't have a name because he doesn't need one, and I think it adds to his character if nobody knows his name beside himself. And that includes me. I don't get to know his name either. One little fun fact about this guy is that his voice sounds a bit like he's speaking underwater. I'm not exactly sure how this works in practice, but whatever, it's cool. I'm never gonna write a book about him, so as long as I think it's cool, it's fine. So all of the characters from here on out are from the world building project I mentioned earlier. These are also all characters that I uploaded specifically this year. So this first character is Moran. She's part of a fringe religious group that takes place over 200 years after the D&D campaign that started this whole world building thing is set. Side note, The world building stuff started as a D&D thing and has since expanded outside of that. So just know it started as D&D, it is no longer D&D. But this story takes place over 200 years after that original D&D story was supposed to be set. So I can't get into what the group is about or really anything about her role in the group because it would kind of spoil elements of my D&D campaign, which I can't do because my players will watch this, but I will give you as much information as I can. So Moran is the younger sister to Mesta, who I will talk about next. She believes that she is a prophet, that she has a special connection with the object of worship in this group. She was always kind of like a spacey, in her own world kind of kid, so her sister was very protective of her. When she started claiming that she was this like prophet figure, the religious group her family was a part of, and that the fringe group had branched away from, they were like, hey, that's heresy, and then basically excommunicated her. They were like, you actually can't do that, so you gotta go. So her sister left with her to take care of her, even though she didn't really believe that she was this prophet figure. She was like, hey, whatever makes you happy, I guess. Like, I'm not gonna tell you you're not. I'm just gonna, like, take care of you and make sure you don't do anything crazy. But yeah, anyway. Moran is really sweet, and even though she seems, like, distant or distracted, she's actually very observant. The tattoos and piercings are relevant to the story and the lore of the world, but again, I can't really explain it here because of spoilers for my D&D group. She likes comfortable, loose clothing, so I gave her this pink shawl thing. So this character is Mesta, Moran's older sister. Like I said, she's protective and supportive of Moran, even if she thinks that she's got a few screws loose. She's much more reserved than her sister and is also extremely down to earth. She's also not great at emotions, which leads to Moran pointing out what she's feeling before she even recognizes it herself. She also enjoys altering secondhand clothing and making it suit her specific needs, and most of her closet has a specific purpose or is just generally geared towards utility rather than style. The one item she keeps on her at all times is this red scarf her mom knitted for her when she was a kid. It's like 15 years old at this point, so it's not as new or nice as it once was. It's kind of like that one stuffed animal that people get when they're really little and hold on to, like keep for their whole life, and it's basically a ragged shell of what it used to be, but still carries a ton of sentimental value. She's initially really reluctant when Moran wants to join this fringe group, but after seeing what they're all about, she decides that they can't do much harm, and it's better for Moran to be around people who don't think that she's crazy. Then we have Defiel, and he's not as fleshed out as the other characters, but he's basically the muscle of the group. He joins, offering his services as basically a bodyguard, but as time passes, his actual motives within the group become more apparent. He just wants control, and after gaining the group's trust, he starts escalating things from a relatively quiet group to basically like an actual cult. He starts pushing them to get more aggressive with spreading their message and doing things like sabotaging organizations that don't align with the group's ideals. This happens over the course of several years, so it's a fairly gradual thing, but by the time the group dissolves at the end of the story, it's way different than it was at the beginning. There's a lot more to the story, but again, it kind of deserves its own video, so I'll probably talk about it later. The next two are my most recently created characters. Their story starts about 100 or so years after the story Mesta, Moran, and Defiel are a part of. Also on the other side of the continent. I do actually have a map, but I will save that for another time. The time period kind of vibe inspiration for the story is a bit of a mix between 1930s and 1960s, specifically American fashion during that time, and technology between the two eras. It's kind of like a weird mishmash of all of that. So this guy here is Dresda. Around the time that this story begins, a big war has been going on, and Dresda is stationed in the coastal town of Rev Pel, to guard a lookout tower where he meets Les, who we'll get to in a minute. Basically, the two of them become best friends over the course of about a year before the war comes to a head and the fighting finds its way to Rev Pel's shore. Les and Dresda both survive everything, though Dresda does lose his leg. They start renting an apartment above a stringed instrument shop, where Dresda becomes the apprentice of the old craftsman who owns the shop in the building. After a while, she decides to retire and spend time with her grandchildren out in the countryside and leaves the shop to Dresda. Dresda's super excited about this, and it gives him a bit of a motivation and a bit of a boost now that he can't do as many things as he used to due to his disability. He's really good at carving wood, which is part of the reason he started working at the music shop, and carves himself a prosthetic leg to help him get around. He becomes really well known for the quality of his instruments and repairs, and starts offering the occasional lesson. After a few years of practice, he also starts doing recitals in town, at first with the veteran orchestra and later also on his own. This is about where the actual story kicks off, so I won't go into a ton of detail aside from that, but this whole time he remains best friends with Les, who's our final character of the day. So Les lived with his family on the outskirts of Rev Pel until he was recruited and started manning the watchtower on Rev Pel's North Beach. He was always fascinated by radios and little machines like that, so his older sister would always bring broken ones home for him to take apart and fiddle around with. Eventually he started working at the town radio station as just an intern, but eventually started doing maintenance on the machines and things like that. Basically, the military needed a radio operator and showed up at the station and were like, hey, we need somebody who's good with radios, can sit alone in a tower for hours and hours. And Les was immediately like, count me in. He was always really bad with people and was worried he'd be drafted to be sent off somewhere unfamiliar to go fight, so this was kind of an ideal situation for him. He was alone in the tower for about 2 weeks before Dresda was sent to work with him. As I said, they became really good friends, and after the war ended, while Dresda was working at the music shop, Les got a job at the Rev Pel port, again as a radio operator, relaying messages and making sure that ships were going in and out of the harbor on schedule and all of that kind of stuff. When Dresda starts running the shop on his own, Les started helping out with management stuff, helping keep the schedule going, booking lessons and appointments, and helping Dresda to keep on top of the books, that kind of thing. Les also has super good hearing, which is part of the inciting incident of the actual story. Basically, Rev Pel gets really big waves of fog fairly often, but recently they've been getting more and more frequent and more intense to the point that it's becoming a big problem. It's dangerous to go outside because of how thick the fog is, and the moisture is starting to mess with the structures and that kind of thing. There's a foghorn, and one day Les starts getting massive headaches when the fog starts to roll in, and he starts hearing something weird in the foghorn. That's all that I'll say about that for now, but yeah, that's the basics of Les and Dresda's backgrounds. Also, while we're talking about these guys, I did make them some actual reference sheets for Artfight. These aren't super detailed, but they have their basic info and the color palettes for other Artfight users to reference if they wanted to draw them. It's not by any means required to include an actual reference sheet for your characters in Artfight, but if you want people to have a more in-depth reference when drawing your characters, it can be really helpful. Thank you for listening to me ramble about my beloved characters for 20 minutes. I put a lot of work into this one, and I'm honestly really happy with how it turned out. I'm still figuring out the whole YouTube thing, as I said, but practice makes perfect, I guess. If you did enjoy it, feel free to leave a like or subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.